Hello, I am Peter Okwache. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. At least 7 children die and dozens are injured as primary school collapses in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The WHO fears that Ebola may have spread to the DRC, from the DRC into neighboring Tanzania. Also on the program, talking climate change. Prevention is better than cure. Gabon is set to become the first African country to receive money in return for preserving its rainforest, $150 million over 10 years from Norway.
We hope it opens the door to other similar agreements, maybe with other countries or multilateral agencies, but above all with the private sector.
And in sport, the IAAF President Lord Coe says he hopes that Caster Semenya returns to the track. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. At least 7 children have been killed and nearly 60 injured after a classroom collapsed at a primary school in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. 2 of the injured children are reported to be in critical condition. Rescue workers and parents had to lift blocks and dig through rubble of the flattened 2-story building in search of survivors. An architect has told the BBC that the building was structurally unsound. Our correspondent Ferdinand Omondi has this report.
At the precious talent school in Nairobi's Dagoretti suburb, what was once a classroom now lies in ruins. The strewn personal belongings and scattered classroom equipment paint a picture of the panic and chaos that interrupted the early morning class. Community members were the first responders, rushing dozens of children to a nearby dispensary. As rescue workers cleared the area, questions began to arise on the integrity of the building. This is a spot where the collapsed classrooms once stood. There's bits of concrete here and there, but you can see the main structure of the building was primarily wood and iron sheets. Not the strongest materials, but for some reason the owners decided to add one more floor on top. Experts say this tragedy was never a question of if, but when.
The building was a disaster waiting to happen. The walling for the building was simply made of these timber offcuts, these little timber logs that are very small. Actually, they're very, very small pieces. You're looking at 100, they're very thin pieces. Then they did the first floor, and the way they did the floor again was to put offcuts on the same feeble timber, and then cast a concrete slab. And the thickness of that concrete slab was varying, and that entire weight of the slab was being carried by these, being transmitted by these very, very feeble, very, very small, timber structure, as it were, that again had not been designed to carry that.
A strong government delegation showed up, perhaps aware of the public outrage spilling onto social media. These are the people entrusted to ensure students are safe in the schools they go to. The education minister said the school was duly registered with 800 students, but admitted the collapsed structures may have been illegal.
You have noticed that I have been to all the other classrooms, and in my most humble opinion, they are stable. Somebody went and built another story on top of the temporary structure. If the owners of this school had remained with a single-story building, this accident should not have occurred.
The school will remain closed for 4 days as investigations continue. Next week, the part of the school left unaffected will reopen. The education minister promised swift action, but also insisted that Kenyan schools are safe. Yet there are many other schools built like this in informal settlements across the country, and there are now genuine safety concerns for these children too. Ferdinand Omondi, BBC News, Nairobi.
Gabon will become the first African country to be rewarded with international funds for preserving its rainforest in an effort to fight climate change. Norway will pay Gabon $150 million over a 10-year period for both reducing deforestation and preserving its natural forests so that they can absorb carbon dioxide. The news has been welcomed by the country, which has created 13 national parks since the year 2000.
Pour moi, c'est pas le montant qui est important, c'est le principe.
For me, it's not the amount of money that matters, it's the concept. It means that Norway, which is a world leader when it comes to issues linked to climate change, approves the process that we put in place in Gabon, approves the quality of our data, and we hope it opens a door to other similar agreements, maybe with other countries or multilateral agencies, but above all with the private sector. If we look at the equatorial forest in Africa, unfortunately, the contrast between West and Central Africa is very stark. We've lost 80% of the forest in West Africa. There are countries like the Ivory Coast that only have 2 or 3% of forests left. So if we don't do anything, that is the future that awaits Central Africa.
Let's get more now on this story. Our environment correspondent Navin Singh Khadka joins us now. Navin, what exactly has Gabon done to deserve this money?
So just when the world is worrying about deforestation, alarming deforestation, this country has proven that deforestation can be significantly reduced. And as that report we saw in that, so many national parks created after 2000. And then the fact that they have also proven that so much of carbon can be sequestered from the atmosphere. So this is very important given that, you see, there was a recent report last week that showed that the global goal of halving deforestation by 2020, next year, has failed. The idea was to actually halt deforestation across the world by 2030. That has failed. And then in that context, and particularly also that report highlighted that West Africa has emerged as a hotspot. DRC, for instance, has lost the deforestation rate in the past 5 years has doubled. So given all this context, what Gabon has done definitely stands out. But the question is, will this be sustained?
And indeed, I mean, we saw Lee White there, the Gabonese environment minister, and Gabon will be leading this fight by African countries, asking the world to keep up with its promises to pay for, checking climate change on the continent. Will they be listened to at the summit today?
Now, this climate finance has been a contentious issue. We've discussed this in this program before also. So this $100 billion a year beginning next year Green Climate Fund, it's not there. So that argument that where is the money, we don't see the money, is still there. It goes on, but then this particular climate action summit, organizers and countries like this, like African countries, what they're arguing is that, see, we have been proving things on the ground, so you need to cough up, you need to show the money. Until it's there, how can we? Now, in that, again, the forest thing, you had this United Nations RED program, the forest program and all that. There have been criticism that, farmers have helped, but money hasn't come out. In that, it's really, really important that these countries need to get. And also, I would like to quickly add here, because Africa is so much climatically vulnerable, and only 20% of that climate finance money has gone for adaptation. And again, adaptation not just for African or poor countries, but for the whole world. And if you compare that with real poor countries, least developed countries as they are known, the figure is they have got only around 5% of that total climate financing. And that is the issue.
I need to get this question. I mean, you just mentioned Africa's vulnerability when it comes to climate change. What are some of the things that are happening on the continent that are now beginning to show people that this is a real problem?
So Africa was already predicted to be very, very vulnerable. African Development Bank, for example, often uses this figure that out of 10 countries, most vulnerable countries in the world, 7 are in Africa. And not to forget, out of those 47 poor countries in the world, least developed countries, majority of them are in Africa. So there have been all kinds of impacts, droughts, floods, coastal surge, hurricanes, cyclones. But the thing is, as you said, new things are emerging. For example, what happened in Mozambique? So in Mozambique, floods were expected. There were some degree of preparation as well. But what happened was the wind factor. This country that used to see only around 125 kilometers per hour of wind, this time, during the recent cyclones, it saw 250 kilometers per hour wind. Big change. New things.
Absolutely. And it's happening all over the continent.
Yes.
Listen, Navin, I'm sure we're still going to have you on the program to talk about climate change. Thank you very much. Navin Singh Khadka there. Now, let's take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. Local officials in the Zimbabwean capital, Harare, say they are shutting down the city's main water treatment plant due to a shortage of foreign currency. The deputy mayor has called the scenario devastating and warned of possible cholera outbreak. He appealed to the government to provide foreign currency for the purchase of water treatment chemicals. And British travel firm Thomas Cook has declared bankruptcy, leaving thousands of holidaymakers facing travel chaos. Hotels in Tunisia say they are owed $66 million. The world's oldest travel company went into liquidation after failing to secure the investment it needed to stay in business. Tanzania is refusing to provide information about suspected cases of Ebola. That's according to the World Health Organization, which says it is compromising efforts to fight the disease. It's been reported that one person had died and those who'd been in contact with the deceased have been quarantined. This latest development suggests the disease is spreading. The current outbreak in the DRC, which started in August last year, has killed over 2,000 people and infected over 3,000. And one person died in Uganda. Now it's feared the virus might have spread to Tanzania's main city, Dar es Salaam. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization itself is being accused of rationing a vaccine used to fight against Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The BBC's senior Africa correspondent, Anne Soy, has been following the story.
The information has not been forthcoming from the Tanzanian authorities. I contacted the health minister over the weekend, and up to now we haven't received any information. And that was after the World Health Organization issued this unprecedented statement saying that there was lack of cooperation from Tanzanian authorities. They are seeking information about suspected cases of Ebola, and they say that through unofficial sources, there have been confirmation of positive tests. A patient who died, the index case, the first case who died, they heard that she had tested positive for Ebola. However, Tanzanian authorities say that is not the case. There's no Ebola in the country. And now WHO is asking for different things. One, they want the clinical tests carried out, the results. They also ask for a differential diagnosis, basically what other disease this patient could have been suffering from. And thirdly, they're asking for samples from that initial case so that they can be subjected to secondary testing at a different facility, which is normally the protocol for any country affected by Ebola. But the Tanzanian authorities so far have not responded to those requests.
The WHO also coming under the spotlight. This extraordinary accusation from Médecins Sans Frontières that it is essentially keeping some of the Ebola vaccines back and not using them.
Well, the statement from Médecins Sans Frontières says that the World Health Organization is giving out these vaccines in a predetermined way, so that even when MSF staff ask for them, they're given vaccines, but they're also given a list of people to receive those vaccines. And this is what MSF is against. It's calling for more transparency in the way the Merck vaccine, that has been shown to be very effective, is being used. However, the World Health Organization says that is not the case. The vaccine is not being rationed. They are not trying to block any organizations from accessing it or from giving it to other people. But it's also announced that a second vaccine is being introduced in the Democratic Republic of Congo to help fight the Ebola outbreak. This is the controversial vaccine which the former health minister had been against, manufactured by Johnson & Johnson, but that is now all clear. It will be introduced as another way of fighting Ebola.
The BBC's Anne Soy speaking to me earlier from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come, not the start that Africa's representatives had hoped for over the weekend at the Rugby World Cup. Mimi will have the details in sports. I'm Peter Okwoche. This is Focus on Africa. Now, a question for you. How do you embrace the power of an African woman's voice? It's a topic very close to the heart of our next guest, Aisha Sise. Aisha Sise is a British broadcaster of Sierra Leonean descent who has worked for the BBC, CNN, ITN and Sky. She's covered a range of stories across Africa, including the abduction of the Chibok girls in Nigeria in April 2015. And today she's guest editing our sister program, Focus on Africa, on the World Service of the BBC. Well, Aisha joins us now. Aisha, thank you very much for joining us on Focus on Africa today. Like I said, you're championing the power of the voice of the African woman. Now, how does that tie in to what you've been doing since you left your last mainstream broadcasting job about a year ago?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be with you. Since I left CNN, I've been finishing up a book which was based on the story of the Nigerian schoolgirls kidnapped in 2014. And I've really spent the time looking at bringing out a different portrayal of these girls and what happened that night and what has happened since, and really humanizing them and allowing them to tell their story in a way that we haven't succeeded to date. I think, you know, doing this with Focus on Africa Radio is a real opportunity to move from the book that I just wrote to showcasing other women across the continent who are working, whether it's across traditional media or social media, who are working with Facebook or community radio, to create spaces where women can tell their own stories.
And I mean, I must say, and you've got an NGO called We Can Lead, We Women Everywhere Can Lead. What exactly do you do?
Yeah, so I created this organization because I really wanted to have a platform to develop young girls in Sierra Leone and help them find their voice, help them along the path towards empowerment, help them stay in school, help them reimagine what is possible in their lives. And so the work we do is around education and empowerment. In the first year, we're an after-school program where we go into their schools. We're working with about 6 schools where our own facilitators go in and they teach our own custom-built curriculum. And we are working on them understanding what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their rights are, how their voices should sound. And then it moves on to a weekend program. And it's a 4-year program, and we have about 500 girls in the program. And it's the work that I'm most proud of.
I've always heard it said, and I as someone whose home is ruled by women, I do agree that, you know, for what you're doing to work, the men have to be on board as well. And is this message of yours trickling down to the men?
Yeah, I mean, I think the message that we have to continue to amplify is that the empowerment of women isn't just good for women, it's good for men, it's good for the family as a whole, it's good for communities and for countries, right? And I think that more men are understanding that women don't see it as a zero-sum game, i.e. if I become more empowered, you become less powerful. I think men are slowly starting to understand that. The girls in my program, we engage their fathers, we engage others in the community who may be male, and generally it's inclusive. So when we have graduation, the whole families come and they all see the benefit of their girls becoming stronger, having a greater sense of their own agency.
I should say, great to have you on the program. And I must say that you are presenting Focus on Africa on the radio tomorrow, so our viewers definitely have to tune in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to have you on the program. Thank you very much. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sport. Another very powerful woman, Mimi.
I wish. Now, the president of the athletics world governing body, the IAAF, says he hopes that world and Olympics champion Caster Semenya will return to compete in athletics within the regulations. Semenya will not race at the World Athletics Championships in Doha, which begin this week, because of new rules which govern testosterone levels in female athletes. Lord Coe told Sports News correspondent Alex Capstick that the rules ensured a level playing field for all athletes.
I hope within the regulations that we've set that she's able to continue in track and field. And that's why we've done it. We haven't set those regulations to exclude people. They are actually there to allow us to maintain the presence of those athletes with that condition at international level.
So you'd like to see her back in 800 metres or 5,000 metres,
yes,
not taking them?
Within those regulations, of course.
Now, right about now, who's who in the world of football have gathered for the Best FIFA Awards, which is taking place in Milan this year. The glitzy affair will see either Liverpool's Virgil van Dijk, Barcelona's Lionel Messi, or Juventus's Cristiano Ronaldo swoop the Best Men's Player of the Year award. For the Women's Best Female Player of the Year, both Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, who were part of the USA Women's World Cup winning squad this summer, have made the short list, as well as England's Lucy Bronze. Moving on to football, African champions Algeria are to play a match in France for the first time in 11 years when they meet Colombia in Lille on October the 15th. The game will be an opportunity for the Algerian community in the country to see the team following their success in the Africa Cup of Nations over the summer. Africa's two representatives lost their opening games at the Rugby World Cup in Japan over the weekend. First, South Africa were beaten by New Zealand 23-13. And then on Sunday, Namibia lost 47-22 in their Group B opener in Osaka. It means they have now lost all 20 of the World Cup matches that have been played in their history. South Africa and Namibia will now face each other on Saturday, with Namibia's coach high hopes that they can improve.
You know, they're a great group of players. They worked so hard, so proud of them. And you know, we'll keep trying to improve and keep trying to get better, but we will try and keep playing the Namibian style of rugby, which is free flowing basically.
The message we're trying to convey is that you can come from Namibia and compete at the biggest stage, and we just want to make our country proud, our families, and encourage even more youngsters to take up the game.
We're wishing both African teams the best of luck this weekend. That's all the sport.
Many thanks, Mimi. Now, he's one of the youngest British royals, but 4-month-old Archie is embarking on his first official visit to South Africa. He's traveling, of course, with his parents, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan. One of their first stops today was at the District 6 Museum in Cape Town, which commemorates the forced displacement of people during the apartheid era. Let's cross over to Cape Town now and speak with our correspondent, Pumza Fishlani. Pumza, how was the reception when the Sussexes arrived in Cape Town earlier today?
They were welcomed with much fanfare here in Cape Town. Their first stop was the township of Nyanga, which is considered one of the most dangerous places in South Africa. The specific work that they wanted to do there was to get an understanding of how women and children in those communities are coping with day-to-day challenges like sexual violence and murder. And they got in touch with a local NGO that's doing work around women empowerment and teaching women self-defense classes and also children about their rights. But as they arrived, there was much cheer and applause in celebration and song and dance, and the Duke and the Duchess got to participate in a bit of that dancing.
Absolutely, we did see some footage of them dancing earlier on. Now, South Africa is only their first stop. Do we know about what they'll be doing and where they'll be going in the next couple of days?
That's right. So this is a 10-day tour across Southern Africa. But over the next few days, for tomorrow in particular, they will be visiting a charity that does work around mental health issues. It's a charity that's run at near a local beach called Munabisi Beach. They will be interacting with some of the mentors there that are helping children around adjusting and dealing with trauma. They will also be visiting a newly announced heritage site called the Bokap, which is home to mixed-race communities here in South Africa. So tomorrow also marks Heritage Day in the country, which is a time to celebrate the country's diverse cultures, and they will very much get a sense of the different tastes and flavors and textures of this country, and that will be happening tomorrow.
And Pumza, we've only got 15 minutes left on the program. I hear 4-month-old Archie has a South African name. Can you tell us what it is and what it means?
He sure does. He got the name at the charity in Nyanga. He was named Nziga, which is a Xhosa name, which means pillar. And the organizers said they gave him this name because they want him to become a pillar of strength for the royal family, but also to carry on the legacy that his parents are trying to follow, and also the legacy of his late grandmother, the Princess Diana.
Thank you very much, Pumza, there live from Cape Town. And that's it on Focus on Africa. Thanks for watching. See you again very soon. Goodbye.